Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. It is Wednesday, the 15th of September, 2021, and I am back at doing the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion videos after being over in Texas for Hurricane Nicholas. I had originally flown out here this week to the Gulf Coast area, not with the intentions of tracking down another hurricane, but actually to pick up some equipment that was retrieved for us in the wake of Hurricane Ida. And I got that equipment. I achieved that first goal. And then within all of that, we had Nicholas. So I've been here a little longer than I was anticipating. I flew in on Monday, got here around noon Monday, met up with a gentleman. His name is Justin. He's over in the Walker, Louisiana area. And I'm going to show you just a small piece of what we got from the GoPro box that he picked up that was over in Frenier Landing near Laplace during Hurricane Ida. I'll show you at the end. So I had Nicholas to deal with as well. We set up a few cameras for that. I worked with my colleague Marcel, and we were all over the area there in Texas doing what we could. And Nicholas has come and not quite gone yet. I'll talk about that. We'll talk about 95L, 96L, and just a general look at the tropics in the rest of the discussion. All right? So let's get on with it, shall we? First, National Hurricane Center homepage. There's Nicholas, a depression now over southwest Louisiana. Still producing a lot of rain. I'll show you that in just a moment. The whole general mess, by the way, is forecast to just move in this general direction with a lot of rainfall and just, yucky weather. That's the best way to put it. With a chance of some flash flooding and other maybe river flooding concerns. We'll take a closer look at that in a minute on the radar. And then here's 96L, high chance of development. And this is 95L, also very high chance of development. If we look at these in the 5-day perspective, you also add another system, fourth system overall, third one that could develop on this particular map. Africa is still churning out these tropical waves. This one should stay off the East Coast. And it's interesting because this feature, I think, will very much dictate eventually what happens with this feature. So as they say, let me explain. So first of all, let's take a look at the satellite animation this afternoon of the Atlantic Basin here, and we notice there's the remnants of Nicholas, the low-level circulation over southwest Louisiana, but the upper and mid-level moisture is sitting over east of there through Mississippi, Alabama, and I got to fly through that. Actually, I'm flying home today at about 4:30 from Gulfport to Charlotte, and then from there down to Wilmington, so that should be kind of bumpy. Oh well, right? The hurricane hunters do it all the time, so why can't I? And then here's 96L, just a very large area of energy overall. And the larger these energy areas are, the energy source, it takes them longer to bundle. And so we're not looking at this to come together in any rapid fashion to cause too much trouble for the East Coast or Bermuda. Could churn up the waves again and send more swells towards the East Coast, and that could lead to rip currents. We'll watch for that. And then here's 95L, slowly getting better organized, another large piece of energy emerging from Africa eventually, and just some leftover convergence moisture there in the Gulf of Mexico. Fortunately, the upper level winds are moving too strong through this area, so I wouldn't worry about anything developing in the Gulf. I mean, let's just shut that down for the next 10 years, shall we? I wish it was that easy. All right, looking at the reflectivity here from Mark Nissenbaum's site over at Florida State University. Nice long radar loop. There's the low level circulation of Nicholas, and here's all that heavier rain. Some of it still in bands. I remember one of them came through here in Gulfport a little while ago, kind of woke me up there with the rain slapping up against the window. All of this will continue to move off generally to the north and northeast with time and spread a lot of rain across this region. Nothing significantly heavy. You could get some localized flooding, and it obviously can make for difficult interstate, secondary, and county road travel. I always try to emphasize impacts. And all that reflectivity you see down there, that's an impact. It's raining. In some cases, it's raining hard. But it doesn't need to rain hard. You get a little bit of ponding on the road. You might be going 85 miles per hour when you should be going 60, and you can have some big problems. Seriously, be careful out there. And just remember, this is a much bigger, if I can talk, a much bigger weather feature than you are. And so you need to just respect that and understand, especially any truckers out there want to keep you guys safe because, hey, you deliver the stuff that we need. So this is a big feature, and it's going to impact travel if nothing else. So just keep that in mind. All right, so looking at the vorticity signatures this afternoon, pretty large pocket of energy still with Nicholas. There's 96L, and somewhere out here is 95L. Interesting that you really don't see it, right? It hasn't bundled up just yet. So we have to wait and see if it comes together more before we really start to worry about it. I think it's going to be a slow process, which is interesting because the longer all of this takes to get together, the more west it's going to track. It's probably sitting over here, the bulk of that energy. In fact, let's go back to the satellite animation. Typically, so the energy should be south and west of the Cabo Verde Islands. That's what I thought. I was like, wait a minute, there's really nothing there. And as you can see, there really is not much there. The bulk of the vorticity is down, straddling the 10-degree latitude line and points south. The bottom line, this is the energy area overall. It's going to take a while to bundle. The longer it takes to do so, the more south it could get with time. And folks in the Northeast Caribbean, you're going to want to watch this first and foremost. It's hurricane season. You don't need me to tell you that. But here I am, just reminding you. And the longer this takes, the more south it'll probably track. So we'll watch that closely. Wow, look at this. The anomalies, the temperature anomalies in the Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific, that La Nina is coming on. And this is going to impact the hurricane season, the upcoming winter season. You got this sort of cold PDO look overall to the Pacific. PDO stands for Pacific Decadal Oscillation. Just a general trend towards this La Nina, the cool Pacific, the quite warm Atlantic main development region, the horseshoe shape and it does extend up to the North Atlantic of the warm AMO. That's the Atlantic Multidecadal Oscillation. And these are just fancy ways of saying, makes me sound real smart, right? That the Atlantic is warmer than normal on a really broad scale and in the areas that are important to give us very busy hurricane seasons, while at the same time the Pacific has cooled, and that gives us less wind shear, less upward motion in the Pacific, and so that air doesn't come up and then sink and spread out somewhere else. The Atlantic generally takes over with its upward motion, and you see we've had a very, very busy season, and we're only at the midpoint of September, for goodness sakes. Hey, look, there's the cold wake from Larry. All kinds of activity in the Gulf has churned things up and brought the anomalies down. Remember, these are departures from the average. What about the actual sea surface temperatures? Let's look at the Gulf first. Now, you see these blues up here, you think, ooh, the water's cold. Well, those are just gradients on the color scale. We're still looking at 27 Celsius or higher, which is about 81 degrees. That's not cold. That's not the same as down here, where it's 30 Celsius still. But look what happened. All of those 30 Celsius readings that we had over here before Nicholas, they are gone. Nicholas took that out, transferred that heat out of the area, turned it into rain, and released it into the atmosphere, and has dispersed it out of the Gulf there. Nevertheless, still plenty of warm water. Just saying, it's not like it's cold yet. We're only in mid-September. We still have about another month before we start to see the shelf waters up here start to cool off. You usually erode it from north to south. That hasn't really happened yet. And then look down here. Wow, still 30 Celsius all around South Florida, on the west side anyway, going all the way up towards Charlotte Harbor, Fort Myers, down, if you just draw a line around it, the Florida Bay area, Naples, the Keys, very, very warm water temperatures. And with October coming, we do have to watch for stuff that develops in the Caribbean, comes up, and then turns northeast. You know how sharp they turn? Sometimes they come up and they hit the panhandle like Michael did. That period of time is coming. Last year it was Louisiana because we had a stronger ridge. Delta came up and went into Louisiana, and then Zeta did the same thing, somewhere near here. Yes, we're getting to that time frame. Over the next month, the Gulf of Mexico is going to be the place to watch for potential high-impact events. Climatologically speaking, that's what we would expect. All right, looking off the Atlantic, 26 Celsius there in the yellow area, so cooling off just a little bit, but still warm enough to support strong hurricanes, that's for sure. The 26 Celsius line, that's about 80 degrees. That's it right there. So everything south of this is still plenty warm as we get on through the rest of the month of September here. And we'll just see, does something come along to take advantage of it? I know you've been looking at the models. We'll address that in just a moment. First, though, the upper ocean heat content. This is a better gauge of the energy that is available. And, everything over here in the western Atlantic, the Caribbean included, Gulf of Mexico, Southeast U.S., Florida Peninsula, surrounded by very high ocean heat content values, at least enough that can support intense hurricanes if you are worried about the wind and the surge part. When we talk about intense, that's usually what we mean. How strong is it? The intensity, though, I'm reminding you, doesn't tell you anything about how much rain is going to fall. That has a lot to do with the precipitable water that's available and how slow the system is moving. But heavy rain is part of that overall product, and the impacts and all that warm water out there can give us, in the absence of hurricanes, some big-time rain events like we generally had there with Nicholas. Luckily, with Nicholas, it moved along a little faster, and it was a little closer to the coast, so the big city areas of Houston and vicinity, you got 4 million people that live up there, escaped another potential big-time disaster. All right, so moving along to the modeling here. What do we got over the next week to 10 days or so? Well, let's first use a color that pops out. There's the signature at the 5,000 foot level of the atmosphere of Nicholas. This is 96L. And then somewhere tucked in here is all of the energy, the pouch of energy, if you will, associated with 95L. And then this is the big old subtropical ridge, at least at the lower levels. A little bit of a weakness in it right here. And those are the different players of what we're going to be watching. So let's move this through time. 24 hours out. What do we see? Well, Nicholas, the energy still sitting down here, raining itself out. General pieces of energy stretching along it from the northeast, though, like I showed you. Kind of a wet pattern across the southeast U.S. There is 96L, trying to get together southeast of the Capes of North Carolina, Cape Fear, Cape Lookout, Cape Hatteras. And then 24 hours out, we should start to see 95L blossom south of this ridge right in here. Makes sense, and it's moving generally to the west. What about another 24 hours? Let's take it out to hour 48. Again, the leftover energy of Nicholas still sitting there just dying away. This system tries to develop a little bit more. Might be a subtropical storm because it's kind of spread out. It's got sort of a hybrid look to it overall. It's not really bundled. And when you compare this and how this is, some energy out there, but it's not focused like this is. 95L trying to focus there more at hour number 48. Moving along another 24 to 72 hours. Now our system starts to come together, but it's kind of broad. And again, if this is a subtropical storm, and that just generally, these are just definitions, scientific definitions. Subtropical storm, it's just more spread out. The wind field, the pressure gradient, everything's just kind of more loosely organized, kind of falling between these mid-latitude storms that you get over land and a tropical storm. It's kind of in between. Again, more spread out. Can be a big wind maker, that's for sure, churning up the ocean, giving you rip currents and that kind of stuff, but they're not as focused, so you don't get the intensity that you get in a bona fide tropical system like what we see down there in the south here, in the Atlantic, in the open Atlantic. That's trying to bundle up a little bit more by 72 hours. But remember what I told you, the longer this takes down here, the more west it's going to track, or south it'll track. And the reason because of that is that it's shallower in the atmosphere, so it's moving along more in the flow down here rather than being influenced by steering layers higher up in the atmosphere. That's the simplest way to put it. So let's just move along to hour number 96. Now, this feature turns into a large sort of ocean storm, and it definitely has eroded the west side of the subtropical ridge, but we see more high pressure trying to develop over the eastern U.S., nice and toasty underneath that, nice warm temperatures. And then there's our system by day 4, probably a tropical depression or a storm by this point in the model. And the fate of it, again, it's like, all right, what happens from here? It's within a couple of days of the islands. So let's see, we go out to day 5, 120, fairly well developed tropical storm probably, comfortably east of the islands. There's this system and the trailing energy absolutely thinned out the ridging here in the central Atlantic. So depending on how deep or shallow this is, it could be a little bit more north and feel that weakness and head out. It could be shallower and just cruise on through the islands and then be in a position to maybe threaten the southeast Bahamas. Day 5 is a very, very important juncture here because there's a lot of different parts going on, including, and you see it right here, this big chunk of high pressure coming off of eastern North America that's going to slide out into the Atlantic and create like a blocking pattern. So where is whatever name this becomes? If 96L becomes Odette first, then this would be Peter 95L if it develops at all. So that's really crucial at this point, the day 5 time frame. So let's just move ahead 3 more days to show you a couple things to watch. All right, so this is day 5. What about day 6? So 144 hours. That's close enough to the islands to possibly warrant some watches, depending on the situation. And then day 7, there's that high that moves out over the Atlantic there, and whatever this is, named or whatever, not looking real healthy, so we'll see it could be dealing with some upper level winds. This is down at the surface, remember, and we could take an hour to look at all the different levels of the atmosphere, but this tells me the structure, and this is one of the most important layers of the atmosphere for me, because if it doesn't look healthy here, the rest of it doesn't matter. If that low-level vorticity center, its skeleton, is not intact, then everything else doesn't matter to me. That's what I look for. Is that what other experts do, the Hurricane Center folks? I don't know. I haven't ever asked them. I try to do my own thing. But that's generally what I look for. That's not very strong looking. But nevertheless, that's a week out, right? Anything could be on the table at that point. It could be an open wave. It could be a Cat 1 hurricane. Who knows? So that was day 7. There's day 8. Or 192, yeah, day 8, sorry. There's day 9, and then finally day 10. Just to give you an idea of how things could look. So this is what day 10 looked like on the 12Z run. This is what day 10 looked like at the 6Z run just a few hours earlier. And this is what day 10 looked like last night on the 0Z run. So all 3 of these runs feature a fairly strong system somewhere in the southwest Atlantic by day 10. That's what you should take away from this, not, ooh, is it heading my way? I know everybody wants, I want to know that. But this is what you look for. These are sort of the puzzle pieces that we want to wait and see how they fit together later on. And I think a very big clue or a very big piece of the puzzle is that the GFS operational and even the ensembles here are indicating something of significance in the southwest Atlantic in about a week to 10 days, right at the height of hurricane season, right? So you got to watch. We got to see what happens. I think the players are going to be there to, at least warrant a couple of eyebrows being raised. But beyond that, we need a few more days to see how things shake out. All right, well, let me get this done and online for you so I can get out of here. And, oh, I forgot. I almost blew it, didn't I? Whew, close. Yes, I was here for a reason before Nicholas, and that was to pick up, I did almost forget, the GoPro box from Fanier Landing. And this is just a short little montage. I'm going to put a much longer, I've already put this on Patreon. Patreon supporters have already seen this, and I'm going to release a much longer version a little later on for them. I mean, after all, they're the ones that are supporting this, funding it and making it happen. The investors, they get to see this first. But here's what it looks like, all right? This is me, and there's Matt, setting this up on August 28th into the 29th. It's actually now the 29th when we do this. And I'll just let it roll. Oh, there's no audio coming through for some reason. Doesn't matter. So there I am setting it up. Fade into the wind blowing my hair back there. This is Fanier Landing. We're done. The GoPro's mounted. It's about 11 feet above the water, the western part of Lake Pontchartrain there. It's about 11 feet up. Remember that. So now we go to the next morning. Water levels are coming up. The wind is turning in pretty good. And we're going to jump ahead to the late afternoon and look what happens. Wow. That is remarkable. Incredible. Probably close to hurricane force winds blowing across that water. You can see the friction the wind causes the surge. I mean, if there was ever a definition of storm surge, this is it. Clearly seeing that the wind is blowing across the water there. But there's more to it than that. There's the process of how that wind turns the water droplets into little microbeads, literally wicking that up into the hurricane. And that's what they do over the ocean. So there's a lot of science in here. It's incredible to see. It's very helpful for educational purposes. We can go back and look at the whole thing. It ran for about 18 hours, the GoPro. It should have run for 36. I need to figure out what happened. But it did capture everything we needed it to capture just before dark on the 29th. So it turned off right before dark, but it still caught peak surge and everything leading up to that. And again, I'll put some other videos like this eventually on YouTube, etc. First, though, we got to talk over with the patrons that support all of this. But here you go. That's a first look at what the GoPro camera caught in Frenier Landing. Now I can exit and get ready to pack up here from the hotel and fly home. Don't forget, we're on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. If you're new to YouTube, subscribe, share the video, like it, hit the notification button if you want to be notified when I post videos in the future, especially when we go live. And as I mentioned, we are supported by the awesome people around the world through Patreon, crowdfunding the future, just like I showed you there. That GoPro video, that's because of Patreon that we're able to do this. So if you want to get involved, it's never too late. All right, let me get back on here and say my goodbyes. That's it. I'm done. I'm going to pack it up and get out of here. I'm Mark Sudduth. As always, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time when I'm back home in Wilmington. Later tonight, we'll do this again tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. We'll talk some more tomorrow.